On the 15th of July 2024, the Church of Scientology applied for a public spaces protection order, asking Mid Sussex District Council to implement a ban on protesting outside their UK headquarters, citing hate speech, harassment, and let's not forget, a toy doll supposedly causing them alarm and distress. What followed was a nearly year-long investigation by the council that involved observing a protest we held in October 2024, reviewing over 500 pages of evidence, and attempting to negotiate a voluntary code of conduct as an alternative to banning our demonstrations. In order for a PSPO to be implemented, there needs to be clear evidence of persistent, ongoing disruption to the local community. Last week, the council produced a report that noted we had only organised 2 protests in the last 6 years, and contrary to Scientology's claims, there was no evidence of any hate speech, discrimination, harassment, or antisocial behaviour. The report stated that our protest did not meet the threshold or criteria required for a protest ban to be implemented, and noted statements from police officers that confirmed we were peaceful at all times and kept kindness and compassion at the forefront of our activism. Instead, it recommended Scientology implement some changes to their annual IES event that would minimise disruption caused to the local community, such as better traffic management and refraining from obstructing the public rights of way surrounding their property. The last year has been challenging in more ways than one, but today we made history. On June 30th, 2025, at 1:32 PM British Summer Time, Mid Sussex District Council formally voted against Scientology's application for Public Spaces Protection Order, fully vindicating protesters. Yes, that's right, as David Miscavige put it so eloquently in 1993, the war is over.
The war is over!
That's right, guys. We did it. The war is over. What exciting news today. I was there in person for the cabinet meeting at Mid Sussex District Council. What a year it has been. It has been definitely a challenging year. And firstly, I wanted to thank everybody who has been a part of this process, whether it be protesters, local residents, councillors, council officials, the workers of the council who have due diligently gone through so many pages of evidence and reviewed everything, and put a lot of care and attention to detail into analysing all of the evidence to come to this decision. The councillors for spending the time reading the report and coming to the vote this morning, today, at Mid Sussex District Council, and of course all of you guys who have supported me on my channel here on YouTube and Twitter, and for those of you who have donated through Buy Me a Coffee. As I'm sure you can imagine, this hasn't been a cheap year by any stretch of the imagination. For example, the cost to the taxpayer of this Public Spaces Protection Order stands at £84,000. I'm reluctant to make public the amount of money I have spent on defending our rights, but needless to say, it is a lot. And so all of your help and support has been greatly appreciated, especially those of you who have donated over the last 24 hours. If you want to support this channel, if you want to support the activism, if you want to help cover some of the costs that I've incurred over the last year so that we can keep up the momentum, keep fighting and keep protesting, please consider using the PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee links down below. It really does go a long way. And if it wasn't for your support, I wouldn't have been able to fight this to the level and degree that I have. And so thank you so much, everybody, in advance for your support. A big day. We made history today, and I just wanted to come on here and talk to you guys about the process, about how it went. Let's look at some of your comments. I also want to share the live stream from Mid Sussex District Council where the decision itself was actually made. But first, let's say hello. SP Crusader Leanie's in the house. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the chat. Please remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and keep the chat on topic. Absolutely. Kathy Scoggins is here. Thank you so much for continuing to be a member, Kathy. Congratulations. Mary Kay London, yay, great news. Bok Buddy is here. Good job, Alex. Snaketology. What a great username. John Page is in the house, the power thetan himself. Cara is celebrating. We have Live, Laugh, Love saying, I'm glad to see a live from you. Congratulations, Alex. Well done. Well, look, I also want to make sure that it's really, really clear. It's not just me. This has been a team effort. There have been a lot of people who have been a part of this, whether it be protesters, local residents, all of those of you who live abroad and have supported by sharing this information on social media and so on and so forth. So I really do appreciate your support. It's a team effort. It's not just a win for me. It's a win for all of us. We've all put in a lot of hard work to make this happen. So thank you on behalf of the protest group, I suppose. P. Tree Na says, howdy, folks, from a sweltering red in the UK. It is boiling hot in the UK. That is true. Howard Taylor Esquire says, well done. To be honest, until councillors vote in favour of their officers' recommendations, I've seen councillors vote against their officers, especially with regards to planning. Yes, Howard, today the vote took place and the cabinet meeting happened and they voted down Scientology's application for a protest ban. That is the news. It is official. The protest ban is not going ahead. And what an epic fail for the Church of Scientology here in the UK. Live, Laugh, Love asks, question, do you think Scientology will continue to hold the IES event at St. Hill this year? Well, who knows? I think it would be a huge step for Scientology to move the IES event abroad. I know they are building the L. Ron Hubbard Hall over in Clearwater, Florida, and my understanding is the intention is to move the IES event over there. But that's a couple of years off for sure. So whether or not they hold the IES event here in the UK this year or not, I don't know. I think it would be a massive defeat for Scientology. It would be seen as a defeat for them if they were to move the IES event as a result of the protests. I think what's more likely going to happen is they will go ahead with their plans, but they will double down on their efforts to attack and harass and intimidate us protesters, try and seek injunctions and other legal methods with which they can restrict our protest rights. That's why it's really important to note, yes, the war is over when it comes to the PSPO, but that doesn't mean the war is over when it comes to defending our rights to protest, our freedom of speech, and our rights to assembly. That is very much still an ongoing war that will continue getting more and more challenging over the next year, because Scientology aren't going to like the fact that they've lost this. They are only going to double down on their efforts and spend more money and more time trying to shut us down. So I personally think the IES event will happen this year in the UK at St. Hill, but I think it's going to come with a lot of ramifications for us protesters. Cara says, I think if not at St. Hill, they still have to deal with protesters. We all know who they'd be, too, depending where they have the event. Yeah, exactly. There are protesters all over the world. It is now a global issue. Wherever they hold their event, it will be met with protesters, people trying to call for an end to Scientology's abusive practices. And that's something I also want to make really, really clear. In all of this work, in all of this activism, we are not protesting Scientology's so-called religious beliefs. You have a freedom of belief, a freedom of choice here in the UK, and I fully support that. I have no issue with people who choose to be Scientologists, who want to follow L. Ron Hubbard's teachings, who want to believe in Xenu, the overgalactic warlord that dropped H-bombs on volcanoes 76 million years ago. If you want to believe that, be my guest. You have every right to do so. But what you can't do is abuse people. It is the behaviors, not the beliefs, that we are protesting. And today's decision by Mid Sussex District Council only vindicates us as protesters and goes a long way in showing that we are peaceful and we are kind and compassionate, and we just want the abuse to stop. So, landmark decision by Mid Sussex District Council today. Howard Taylor says, well done. It isn't over until councillors vote. Yes, the councillors have voted. They voted today, and I'm going to share some of the live stream from that with you shortly. Bog Buddy says, give the fact they tried to withdraw at the last moment, they should have to pay freeloader debt of 80k before reapplying for another order. Yes, and that's a detail that I really want to highlight, is the Church of Scientology at the last minute having read the report that it's not going to go their way. Scientology last week tried to withdraw their application for a protest ban and said they're going to seek alternative measures to restrict our rights as protesters. The council said, well, it's too late. You've already applied. We've already done all of the work. It's cost the taxpayer £84,000. The meeting has been scheduled. The evidence has been sent to the councillors, and the vote will be taking place. But we will note the fact that you wanted to withdraw your application. And indeed, today, the vote did happen. Verhoeven is here. The right decision, a complete waste of officer time and public money by an organization who wants everything on their terms. Not today, it seems. Absolutely, very well put indeed. I couldn't agree more. Haggis Basher says, so just like Clearwater, they retreated rather than take a loss. Now go the legal route through politics, like going to the AG of Florida. Yes, 100%. They tried to retreat, but it failed, just like their application failed in the first place. We have Debbie is here. Thank you so much for joining, Debbie. It was so great to meet you when you were over here in the UK, saying great job, Alex. Thank you so much. But great job also to the other protesters that took part in this process. Howard also says, you're a force of nature. Go onwards with increased vigor. The war is not over. We have won this battle. Yeah, precisely. The war is over in terms of the PSPO. The war is not over in terms of the fight against Scientology's abuses. That still very much goes on. Kirby's mum is here, who's been a member for 6 months. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well done, Alex. Congratulations. Thank you. All right, let's have a look at today's meeting. This is the Mid Sussex District Council live stream of the cabinet meeting earlier today. I was there in person along with another protester. It was great to see things happen in real time. I've put the link to this in the description down below if you want to watch the whole thing. The meeting was an hour long. The first half an hour or so is the PSPO. We're not going to watch the whole thing. Essentially, I've skipped forward a little bit. Lucy Corrie, who's the Assistant Director of Communities at Mid Sussex District Council, and one of the directors, Judy, I can't remember her last name, gave a statement at the beginning. The leader of the cabinet, the chairman, Robert Eggleston, issued or made a statement and said, hey, this is the item on the agenda. We're going to talk about the PSPO. Lucy Corrie read out her report, and there was a couple of short statements. And this is where it starts to get interesting. I've skipped that part because I think most of you already know the backstory to the PSPO. If you don't, go and check the previous live streams where I've talked about it. But here, let's watch this and see what the reaction was at today's council meeting.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Lucy, for your comprehensive introduction. And again, for all of your hard work and the rest of the team on this. Just one quick question.
That is a point also I want to make really clear. £84,000 of taxpayers' money, yes. But also, a lot of time has been spent by Mid Sussex District Council officers in reviewing the evidence, looking at the over 500 pages of evidence, liaising with police, West Sussex highways, with protesters, with Scientology, with local residents, and producing the report, analysing the evidence, looking at the live stream footage, police body cam footage. This has not been an easy feat for anybody involved. It has been a lot of time, and I really do want to thank Lucy Corrie and the team at Mid Sussex District Council for the care and attention to detail with which they have reviewed this application, and the effort that has been put into analysing everything and making the decision. Even though Scientology withdrew the application at the last minute, I really appreciate the effort that the council put into making sure that this was a fair process from the get-go. So thank you so much to the council. Let's carry on.
Appendix P, which you referred to, the information pack, did that come to us in a redacted format?
No, the church provided a full pack that I've redacted for public consumption.
Right, thank you for that. Okay, so we're working within the framework of two crucial pieces of legislation. Firstly, the Anti-Social Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014, especially Section 59, and then secondly, the Human Rights Act 1998, which consolidates the European Convention on Human Rights, and especially Articles 9 10 and 11 of ECHR. Appendix B sets out the statutory guidance on PSPOs and the range of other measures that are available to the police and local authorities to manage behaviours that could be detrimental to a local community's quality of life. To be clear, PSPOs are not a one-size-fits-all solution. It sits at the top end of the scale of responses, with doing nothing at all being at the other end of that scale. To put it another way, anything we do in the context being considered here must be proportionate. Yeah. So section 59 of ASBCA sets out the statutory tests, and these, as you said, are set out in paragraphs 10 and 11 of the report, but I'd also refer colleagues to paragraph 85 of the report, which actually answers all of the questions posed in paragraph 11. And it seems to me that the meat of the decision lies in the answers to little 6 and little 7 in paragraph 11. In my view,
Guys, I know that there are a lot of references here to the appendices, to the report, and so on, paragraphs and numbers and so on. And all of the documents that Robert Eggleston here is referring to are available on the Mid Sussex District Council website. I uploaded them to my blog, Scientologybusiness.com, yesterday as well. So if you want to follow along and look at all of the documents, you can do. I will point out and show the relevant or important ones later on. But there are over 500 pages of evidence here. So it hasn't been, it's not going to be easy to summarize every single thing. But please understand that he is referring to things like police reports, emails and correspondence with the church and with police, West Sussex Highways, and all of that, as well as the council's own observations of our protests.
As regards little 6, it is fair for us to judge the degree of effect that the protests have or may have on the Scientologist and the locality. So the more limited the effect, the less that is needed by way of response. Then as regards little 7, it is perfectly acceptable to consider what would be a proportionate response, because different protests have different effects. One person attending a silent vigil is very different to 500 people with a marching band. Or to pose it as a question, would a PSPO balance the conflicting rights of the parties, or is something less acceptable? And we answer that question by going to the evidence, especially the independent accounts. I would draw colleagues' attention to the police statements in Appendix F, the evidence log in Appendix G, little c, and the evidence summary table in Appendix W. The protesters also supplied us with links to their YouTube channel, where it is clear that the protests in 2023 and 2024 were, by and large, peaceful, well-organised and good-natured.
So, just to confirm, the council watched the live stream footage. They analysed the footage that was captured by police body cams that they were wearing, and they looked at our behaviours, as well as having physical council observers there in 2024. And the council agrees that our protests were peaceful, they were lawful, and we didn't do anything wrong. And that is because kindness and compassion are at the forefront of our activism. And what a huge thing for the council to say. This completely contradicts everything Scientology says about our protests. They claim that we are anti-religious bigots, that we are engaging in hate speech and discrimination and harassment, and the council here are saying that simply is not the case. Scientology are lying.
But what are these conflicting rights? Article 9 of ECHR grants the Scientologists the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Article 10 and 11 grant to the protesters the right of freedom of expression and freedom of assembly. But none of these rights are absolute, and can be the subject of restrictions, but any restrictions on them must be applied proportionately. It is also clear that there is no order of precedence, for example, one right being less relative than the other. There is no scale of relativity. We're therefore required to make a judgment which balances the rights of each party, balances the rights of the protesters and the Scientologists in an even, impartial and proportionate way. And we do that by looking at the evidence, and the evidence that's been collected is comprehensive, covered in Appendix G, C, and also Appendix W, and summarised in paragraphs 17 to 25. There is no dispute as to the small scale of these protests. In 2023, it was attended by 25 people, and in 2024, only 12 people.
So that's not quite accurate. I do want to point this particular point out. 12 and 25 are not the exact numbers. It was probably about that at any one time. 25 people were there outside the church premises at any one time in the first year. But the first year, I think it was 46 or 48 protesters took part, but people weren't there from start to finish the entire day. Some people came and then they left, and then other people came and they left. So there were about 46 or 48 people. I think it's 46 people the first year, but at any one time, there were about 25 people. I would agree with that. And the second year, I haven't done a head count, but I would agree it's probably in the region of 12, 13, 14 people. It was a much smaller protest last year. And for Scientology to claim that this protest was causing severe disruption to the local community, to their event, is just outrageous considering the small size of our protest group. Many thousands of people watched the protest online. This is a large movement, but in person, it was just a few of us. And there's no way such a small protest could cause the level of disruption Scientology were trying to claim that we did.
Despite an impression that these events take place more than once a year, it is also clear that the protest only occurs at the annual IAS event and not at other times. So we're looking at a small protest on a one-off occasion spread over 3 days. The comprehensive evidence log in Appendix GC demonstrates that some behaviour has taken place which can cause nuisance and or have a detrimental effect on the quality of the life of the locality. However, it is clearly obvious that any nuisance or detrimental effect is as much a product of the event itself as it is of the protest.
So, to clarify, the council here are saying, yes, there is disruption caused over this weekend. The disruption happens in the locality and it affects people. But that disruption is not just caused by protesters. It is caused by the event itself. Scientology's poor traffic management, Scientology's, refusal to stop blocking the public right of way, Scientology's playing of bagpipe music over loudspeakers. They had a part to play in the disruption as well. And the council here are saying it is not fair to put it all on the protesters. The event itself is what causes disruption.
Saint Hill Road is a narrow rural lane which is ill-equipped to deal with the volume of vehicles and pedestrian traffic. Loud bagpipe music is played on a continuous loop. Traffic management was observed as being poor. Now, whilst the protesters may well add to these traffic issues, their impact, given their number, is small. The narrowness of the lane and the limited alternative points to hold a safe protest means that for a short period of time, protesters and Scientology attendees are inevitably near each other. And that seems to be where the crux of the problem exists. Scientologists at Saint Hill could take steps to alleviate this problem for themselves, and that's evidenced in the report, because it cannot always be the case that the civic authorities have to provide all of the solution.
I thought that was such a great point. Scientology have the ability to minimize disruption and do things on the property that would solve their problems. If they are offended by protesters gathering outside their gates, they could use another entrance, for example. If they were to, have better traffic management, then people would be entering and exiting the property a little bit quicker, which means there'd be less time that people are spending on the road reading our signs and so on. Scientology could apply for an injunction, or there are other measures that they could try and use to restrict our protest rights. They could, for example, turn down the bagpipe music, which would mean we wouldn't have to chant so loud. The council here are saying Scientology have options available, but they're just refusing to do any of them, which I just thought was brilliant.
Crucially, as regards the protests in 23 and 24, the police made no arrests. There were no incidents reported to them of hate speech. No public order infringements were recorded. I have watched YouTube clips of interviews with officers at the 2024 process, which confirms that the protests were peaceful and by and large good-natured.
So that is total vindication of our protest group. There was no wrongdoing. There was no hate speech. We did it, guys. We were peaceful and we were lawful at all times. Well done. And thank you to the council for making note of just how wrong Scientology's accounts were of our protests.
Crucially, the protesters and the police do work together to manage the protest as best they can, given the circumstances of the road. They do that on a risk assessment basis with an aim of reducing conflict in the area. Alternative places that have been proposed have not been considered suitable. Now, I accept that the Scientologists have given a different interpretation of events, alleging that in 2023, protesters were offensive, rude, and unpleasant. But I've seen little evidence in the reports that we have that this is the case. And there is common agreement that the 2024 protest was less eventful.
Calling Scientology out for their lies. Well done to the chairman of the cabinet here, Robert Eggleston, calling Scientology out. Fantastic.
Accordingly, I see nothing that would justify the creation of a PSPO on St Hill Road or West Hoathly Road. Indeed, it is fair to say that even the Scientologists could accept a less severe solution. For example, by way of a code of conduct, which is almost as far removed from a PSPO than you can get. In an email from the Scientologists' solicitor at Appendix T(b), he states that on the face of it, the suggested voluntary code of conduct by the protesters would be an acceptable alternative to the PSPO, providing, of course, that it was always adhered to.
What he is talking about here is, as part of the negotiation with the council, Mid Sussex District Council suggested that instead of a PSPO, instead of a protest ban, we implement a voluntary code of conduct, which would have requirements for Scientology and for us protesters. For example, the first voluntary code of conduct that was proposed included an agreement from both sides not to film each other and not to hold signs that say certain things, and things like that. We went back and forth quite a lot with that voluntary code of conduct, and we got it to a place where the final draft actually was basically just saying that we as protesters will agree to abide by the law, we will not do anything illegal, and it didn't actually result in any restrictions on our freedom of speech or our rights to protest or our freedom of expression. Scientology's code of conduct had a few more restrictions. For example, it said, please don't obstruct people, don't obstruct the public right of way, don't film protesters, stop harassing them, and so on. The church initially agreed to this voluntary code of conduct and said it sounds like a suitable alternative to a PSPO, and we would be happy with that. However, as soon as they saw our voluntary code of conduct after the negotiations that I had held with the council. They suddenly weren't happy with it, and they withdrew their consent for the voluntary code of conduct, and a agreement was not reached between Scientology and the council because they wouldn't agree to their code of conduct without specific terms being included in ours. And the council said, no, that would not be fair to have those specific terms in our contract. So unfortunately, Scientology, it made you look bad because you couldn't come up with an agreement. But we as protesters were able to negotiate, and we came up with a voluntary code of conduct.
Hopefully, other parties can agree such a code of conduct. Therefore, in view of the above, and for the reasons set out in the report, I propose that we do not make a PSPO on St Hill Road or West Hoadley Road in East Grinstead as recommended on page 5. I would also encourage the parties to continue talking to each other to find an accord and an alternative acceptable solution. Before I hand over, I'd just like to come back to the information pack in Appendix P.
Okay, now guys, this is where it gets real spicy. So as part of the evidence submitted by the Church of Scientology, they included an information pack which they gave to the council about protesters. I'm going to share my screen and show this information pack with you. This was, again, it's available online now on the Mid Sussex District Council website. It is a dossier of protesters, and this is an OSA document. And what's particularly amusing is it actually references people who never even showed up or joined or attended a protest. But it just goes to show how Scientology watch and investigate and follow protesters, and they put this information into a pack and gave it to the council and said, look, these are the people who are protesting and the things that they have engaged in. It gives you a profile of Anonymous, for example, who have had nothing to do with our protests in 2023 or 24. But it does have a screenshot of a tweet. I think that's a tweet that I sent. I might be wrong, but from memory, it looks like the sort of thing I would tweet. And then it has profiles on different protesters. Obviously, the council have redacted the photos and the names, but these are documents that OSA produced and profiles they created on the protesters that was sent to the council. It says, look, this person was arrested. This person was found guilty. This person was assessed by an approved mental health professional and subsequently sectioned and detained in a secure mental health facility for 15 days. He was protesting outside St Hill, and he was outside an exhibition protesting in London. There's pictures, for example, of this person protesting. There are multiple pages attacking protesters and profiling them. And this is an example of how Scientology do what they can to do a noisy investigation, to get information about protesters and try and use it against them. Now, this is really, really important because the council called them out for this. And this is, I think, the highlight of today's meeting is with regard to this specific information pack. Listen and watch very closely.
PA. This information pack included a dossier on leading figures at the protests. It was sent to us in an unredacted format. That is, we have been sent personal data, which includes special category data, sensitive personal data on political affiliations and health, and data covered by Article 10 of GDPR, criminal offence data. For the life of me, I cannot see what the lawful basis for the processing of these categories of data is, either in the Scientologists retaining the files or making a disclosure to a third party. On the face of it, this looks like a data breach, and I would encourage the Scientologists to refer this matter to the ICO without delay. Thank you. I'm now looking for a second.
So, to summarize, Why does Scientology have this information? How did they get it? This is absolutely in breach of GDPR, which is the data protection laws here in the UK and in Europe. And the council here are saying that Scientology need to refer themselves to the Information Commissioner because this is a data breach. And his words, not mine. I can't for the life of me understand why they have processed this information. This is huge. And of course, it is something that we will be following up on. Now, let's have a look at the next speech before we start looking at some of these questions. The next speech is from Ian Gibson, who is another councillor. He was standing in as the vice chair of this meeting, and he also sits on East Grinstead Town Council.
I'll speak now if that's all right. I'm very familiar with the area. I'm familiar with a number of the properties on there and familiar with the roads around there, although I have never been inside the manor itself, the places which I've been in, the rugby club and the sports club there. I have been caught in heavy traffic there. It is a narrow road. The occasion in which I was caught in heavy traffic was when the rugby club was being used as the distribution centre for emergency water supplies, and a large number of residents were required to drive there in order to pick up. And it was clear to me that any pedestrians that might be trying to use the road on that occasion would be in serious danger. The process that's reported here today, and I'm not going to go into too much of the detail of the process, it was fixed by the People and Community Scrutiny Committee in October last year, as Councillor Marsh has already indicated. And that paper included a timescale for a recommendation to be brought to this committee. And I want to start by congratulating the officers in the thorough and comprehensive assessment of the issues that we have before us here, and for engaging with all the parties involved to explore alternative solutions to a public space protection order. Now, I have read the many pages of documents. In fact, I did so before it was the church right to wrote in to withdraw the application, and I've also looked through all the videos. I just want to highlight in particular.
I love that point, actually, because when Scientology tried to withdraw their application for a protest ban, one of the comments that Scientology's lawyer made was, hopefully this saves councillors a little bit of homework because now they don't have to review all the evidence because we don't want to do a PSPO anymore. And that was just a middle finger up to the council because that was submitted only a couple of days before the PSPO meeting that happened today. Of course, councillors would have already read the evidence and the documents provided, and what Councillor Gibson here is saying is that I'd already done that before Scientology had submitted their withdrawal. So I love that he got that on record.
One aspect of the police officer's statements, and it's in one of the statements, and it's in Appendix FB, where the officer says that he's policed this process several times in the last 6 years. This is from a document which was written in November 2024. And in general, a small amount of protesters stand near the main entrance of St Hill Manor. And whilst I've been present, matters have been peaceful between all parties. And I find that perhaps the most compelling part of the evidence in all of the many hours and the many pages. I note that since the officer's report was published, the church have withdrawn the request. And that does not, in my mind, that does not in any way diminish the work that the council and others have undertaken. Both of the principal parties have been prompted to reflect on their role and behaviour, and that will be of long-term benefit. And while it's not been possible to get an agreement on a voluntary code of conduct, I hope that the continuing dialogue with the council, which the council is committed to, and the police in particular, will resolve the remaining issues. Like you, leader, I don't find the making of a PSPO proportionate in this instance, and I support the recommendation. Thank you.
Do any of my colleagues wish to add anything? Councillor Anne-Marie Cook.
Thank you. I won't go back over the detail. I think we've covered that well. All I wanted to say was that having studied the report in conjunction with the appended documents, I personally am decided that the PSPO should not be granted. Neither the most recent correspondence received from Mr. Barnes-Ross nor the request from the church to withdraw this request alters this decision. Much work has been undertaken by officers in preparing this report, and I commend them for their diligence. Also members in Cabinet and scrutiny. I was pleased to see that both the church and Mr. Barnes-Ross referred to this in their correspondence last week. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I similarly, I note the comprehensive report and the appendices, and having reviewed these, I commend the officers for their diligence in compiling these reports, which provide a scrupulous level of detail. I would urge the Church of Scientology to engage with the demonstrators and police to help resolve this matter. Take note of the final comments in the report that highlight a number of actions they could take towards ensuring public safety, and noting its overall findings that an order is not justified in the circumstances, namely the necessary statutory tests have not been met, and I therefore support the recommendation.
Thank you.
All right, so let's skip forward here to the vote.
And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed.
There we have it, ladies and gentlemen, unanimous decision by Mid Sussex District Council to reject Scientology's application for Public Spaces Protection Order. This vote was carried, and the vote was to reject the application, which is why it says yes rather than no. They were voting on the council's recommendation, which was to deny the application, and so obviously they supported that unanimously. Guys, the war is over. What a fantastic win. It is official. Thank you so much for everybody who has been a part of this. Let's take a look at some of these questions I've been starring as we've been going through. Cat, but no hat, says, I've had a horrendous day, so this is amazing news. It's just what I needed. So much hard work, and you bloody did it. So blooming proud of you. Thank you. Sorry to hear about your horrendous day. I hope this perks you up. This is indeed excellent news, and I hope everybody watching this can celebrate in an appropriate way. Hartley says, congratulations. It's always amusing to see them being so predictable. Fight, and then they try to back out at the last minute. Absolutely. Instead of suffer a defeat, they tried to withdraw. But unfortunately for them, it was too late to do that. Kestrel 42 says, great news. Thank you. Becky, Big Brother fan, says, looks like the council are no longer safe pointed. Well, Mid Sussex District Council aren't as safe pointed as East Grinstead Town Council. Mid Sussex is the next level up from East Grinstead. East Grinstead very much are safe pointed. And there are one or two councillors in Mid Sussex who are safe pointed, such as Dick Sweatman, who has gone to multiple Scientology events and has attempted to meddle with protest activities behind the scenes in the past, but he did not take part in this vote because he was not part of the cabinet. But absolutely, this is an example of the council doing what they should, staying impartial, looking at the evidence and making their decision. Scientology up north. Hi, Miriam. Congrats on the big win, Alex. Thank you so much. Rachel Harris here is saying, yay, I managed to catch this live. And oh my God, what an amazing time to be able to share with all of you guys. 100%. Bog Buddy says, Scientologists lying. They are the most ethical creatures walking the earth, I was told. Absolutely. And that's just one of the many lies that they tell, is that they are the most ethical people on planet Earth. However, they are actively trying to restrict our human rights, our right to protest, our freedom of speech. And that doesn't sound very ethical to me, lying to the council about our protests being harassment. It's not very ethical, in my opinion. Rachel Harris says, Alex, I have a question. Do you think someone is being punished for this? I've read horrible stories of staff being punished. Well, it's impossible to tell what's going on inside the Church of Scientology. The RPF, the Rehabilitation Project Force, apparently was disbanded a couple of years ago, but it has been replaced with a less harsh version of the Estates Project Force. It's being called Put on Decks. There will be hard manual labor. for anybody in the Sea organization that was a part of this and wasn't able to ban protest rights, I'm sure. And that is absolutely something we need to be aware of, is as a result of Scientology's attempted ban on protesting being something that fails, people will be abused. People are abused inside the Church of Scientology every single day, in every city, at every level, in every country in which it operates. That is why it's important we speak out. That is why we are trying to raise awareness of this. This is not just a crazy American cult. This is an organization that actively abuses its members everywhere. And that's why it's important for government to take action and for law enforcement to investigate and do something about it. So, yes, it is entirely possible. I would even go as far to say maybe probable that somebody will end up on hard manual labor or doing lower conditions, having an ethics handling program as a result of this PSPO process falling flat on its face. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast, and that's exactly why we need to continue doing what we are doing. And I do hope there are many instances of people who have been put on punishment on hard manual labor as a result of David Miscavige or Scientology unjustly forcing these people to do punishments. And that is when the penny drops. That is when somebody realizes, I'm out. I'm being punished here for something I haven't done wrong. And sometimes that is all it takes to push someone over the edge and get them to call the Aftermath Foundation and seek help in leaving. So that is my hope, is that if somebody or anybody is being abused by Scientology as a result of this, they use that as an opportunity to escape. And if you do need help leaving Scientology, please contact the Aftermath Foundation. The number is on my t-shirt, 0800 090 3372 or aftermath.help. Or, of course, you can contact me. I will happily help anybody who wants to escape and leave Scientology. Cara says, good on them for getting it on the record. Absolutely. Animal Audit Corner says, comment, your government saw right through Scientology's phony persona filled with lies and hate. I wish my government here in the US would do something instead of looking the other way. Well, look, it's persistence. It took a lot to get to this point in time. And, you know, who knows what will happen next, but I am glad that this decision was made today and it went our way. Leanie, excuse me, says, comment, in other words, put your big girl and boy pants on. Yes, absolutely. That's what the council said to Scientology today. Sue Denham says, Alex and team, a massive thank you for all your many, many months and months of hard work amongst all the abuse you have received. It is so appreciated. Well, thank you. And of course, that goes out to everybody who's been standing there alongside me, protesting and supporting behind the scenes. It really does go a long way, and I really do appreciate it. Nancy Jane says, good afternoon, Alex. I just popped on and heard the wonderful news. I'm ecstatic, and may I say, job well done. And I mean that from the heart. Thank you. Well, thank you. Absolutely. Rachel Harris says, question, how did they get this personal information? Great question. Perhaps it's through the private investigators that they pay to follow us protesters, to dig into our backgrounds and our personal information. Who knows? That is one of the questions that I hope the Information Commissioner's Office will be asking in the subsequent investigation that will, of course, be happening. Kestrel 42 said they could have gotten this information easily from doing the research in the US branches of Scientology. We don't have these protections here. Not true, I'm afraid, Kestrel 42. GDPR applies to any company that is processing information about a UK or European citizen, wherever they are based, wherever it is being done, and wherever the company or the person is situated. If it's a US company doing the research in the US and it's a US citizen, but it's about a UK or a European citizen, GDPR applies. And therefore, Scientology are in the wrong here and they can be held accountable. So that's a positive, I suppose, is that this hopefully will result in an investigation. Leanie says, as if Scientology will refer themselves to the ICA. Well, yes, that's another thing. Will they ever actually refer themselves? I don't know. However, they are obliged to. Under GDPR, if an organization is aware of a data breach, they have to report it themselves. If they do not report it themselves, somebody else reports it, and they investigate and find out that they didn't report it themselves. it's then a bigger issue, and the penalties are more severe. So if Scientology don't now refer themselves to the ICO, it's only going to make it worse for them. So my advice to Scientology would be to refer themselves to the ICO, because I can assure you other people will be referring this matter to the ICO. And when the ICO look into it and realize that you haven't referred yourselves, it just makes you look bad, and it will cost you a lot more money. And of course, the penalties will be harsher. Kestrel42 says, Alex, you've really earned my respect for how you're protesting. Thank you. Kara says, damn, I do a lot with data protection at work. They are totally fucked to be getting called out on a breach. That's what is the cherry on top, in my opinion. They are not just being called out for their harassment, for their intimidation, for their lies. They are also being called out for breaching data protection laws and producing this dossier on protesters, some of whom never even went to a protest. That's what makes it even funnier, is some of the people in this pack have never actually been to an IAS protest that I've organized. It's just funny, but also deadly serious, of course, because it's people's personal data. Kobe's mum says, a question, when do you think it will be more clear when the IS event will be held this year? It's always very last minute. Last year, we didn't get notification for until a couple of weeks beforehand. Scientology have agreed to provide the council with more notice this year. They have advised 6 to 8 weeks. Whether or not they actually do it is another question. I hope that we have more notice, but I will, of course, keep my ear to the ground and keep you guys in the loop about when that date becomes clear. Kara says, in seriousness, I was there in 2023. If there's anything on me in that file, I'm tempted to go nuclear on the GDPR issue. Well, Kara, have a look. The documents are on the Mid Sussex District Council website. They are redacted, so they don't have your personal information in them, but the council will have a copy that does, because Scientology did not redact that data information, the data from the information before they submitted it. Rachel Harris says, question, Alex, when you were there at the council meeting, were you able to thank any of the members for their work? It sounds like they really did a mountain of work and came to the right conclusion. Not in person. I was in the public viewing gallery, which is a separate area to where the councillors were meeting. And after this item on the agenda, they subsequently went in and voted on the budget, which is another half an hour or something of voting. So I didn't get an opportunity to meet with them or see them in person. They could see me in the public viewing gallery, and of course I've thanked everybody via email before, and I will send another thanks following this, but no, I didn't get the chance to see them or speak to them in private after the meeting at all. No. But buddy, question, are there any extra permitting required for cruises helicopter to fly into the manor and land, given the residential nature of the area? No, there isn't. It's not actually a residential area. It is the countryside in the middle of nowhere. There are no extra permits needed. There is restricted airspace near St. Hill because of Gatwick Airport, but the helicopter taking off and landing at St. Hill doesn't come into play. It doesn't get affected by the restricted airspace. Leaning says, comment, hopefully the council will realise now that they really do have files on everyone, including them. Precisely. Jennifer Arnold says, question, do you think little Davy is crying now? Yeah, well, who knows? I think he will be shaking in his boots. He'll be very angry that this didn't go his way. And I'm sure that we are not, this isn't the end of it. We are going to see more doubling down from Scientology on their harassment and intimidation of critics. That is what they do. That is how they behave in situations like these. So yes, it is a moment of celebration, but it is also a moment of apprehension and bracing for impact, because as we all know, Scientology will only double down on their efforts. And so that is why I put the post out that I did yesterday saying, if you want to support this cause, it has cost a lot of money, it's cost a lot of time, and I'm not complaining. I do this because I want to help. I think it's the right thing to do. But what I do want to do is continue with the momentum that we've already got going. And so if you want to support this activism and support the fight that we are inevitably going to have over the next year, which is going to be more challenging than the previous year, it's just the way it goes. Please consider using the PayPal Buy Me a Coffee links down below. But the best, most important thing that you can do, the most effective way that you can support this movement, what I've been doing, what our protests have been doing, and I really mean this, is to press the like button, to comment down below once the live stream is over, because that helps push the video out to more people. It raises awareness, and that's what we need. We need public support, public attention, more people aware of this issue, and that is the most effective thing you can do to support this movement. So thank you so much for everybody. And oh my gosh, what a wonderful surprise right at the end here. Bossy Tuber, thank you so much for your super chat. I really, really do appreciate it. Guys, that's it from me for now. There is going to be a wealth of content that's going to come from this, I'm sure, because there are 500 pages of documents that I, of course, will break down bit by bit. Please subscribe to the channel if you aren't already subscribed. Please like that, press that like button. Please subscribe to Scientology Business, my blog. The link is in the description. I really appreciate it, guys. I hope you all have a chance to celebrate this evening. This is a monumental landmark victory for us. And what a sign that things are changing when it comes to the public perception of Scientology. And if I've got one message for the Office of Special Affairs, it's this: flunk.